Hello and welcome to another episode of Agri Art. For this episode, we'll be covering the paintings by A.N. Bacchisi and the history of pumpkins and pumpkin relatives. Cucurbita pepo is one of the most variable species in the entire plant kingdom in terms of cultivated plants. Most pumpkins and many different winter squashes belong to this species. The earliest record of the pepo squash, as I'll call it, and now you'll call it, appeared within the botanical herbals of the Renaissance era. One of the major artists who painted between 1769 to 1774 was the French horticulturist and botanist Antoine Nicolas Duchesne. Born in 1747 and died in 1827, Dr. Duchesne's work in the cucumber family, which includes cucumber, squash, and whatnot, listed 6 species, 2 of which were watermelon and bottle gourd, both of which were removed from the genus Cucurbita and placed in the genus Citrellus and Legionaria, respectively, during the 1830s. The other 4 species were Cucurba pepo, Cucurba verrucosa, Cucurba melopepo, and Cucurba ovifera. In later years, it was discovered that all 4 species are in fact the same species, Cucurba pepo. Even prior to Carl Linnaeus, who pioneered the use of binomial nomenclature, Dr. Duchesne already utilized this technique, although it did not take off until Linnaeus popularized that methodology. Most of his work was studying the genealogy and hybridization between these species, or in this case, subspecies. Most of his work was lost, and it was only rediscovered in relatively recent years. Duchesne carefully observed and drew realistically natural size and true to color copies and depictions of the fruit from different hybridization events that he created between the 4 groups of Cucurba pepo. Although he also attempted to crossbreed Cucurba pepo with Cucurba maxima and Cucurba moschata. He combined the 4 species he mentioned into one species called Cucurbita polymorpha, later renamed Cucurba pepo. Horticulturally, the pepo squash contains 8 groups of edible fruit cultivars: the Italian marrow, the pumpkin, the vegetable marrow, the zucchini, the scallop, the acorn, the straight neck, and the crook neck. The first 4 belong to the pepo subspecies, and the latter 4 to the ovifera subspecies. Pepo squash also contained 3 groups of non-culinary forms for decoration purposes: flattened spherical, warted and oval, and pyriform gourds. The first 2 belong to the pepo subspecies, with the last one belonging to the ovifera subspecies. Dr. Duchesne used the term varieties in the same way we would use cultivars, referring to specifically cultivated lineages of these species. Several of the cultivars painted are of his own creation, through crossbreeding between subspecies and variants, 2 of which can be seen in the next slide. Only a portion of the drawings were added into the paper I'm referencing, and I will be covering them in the next slide. The first drawing we will cover is drawing number 1. Created in 1770, it is a very dark, very intense, orange-colored gourd. Similar, if not identical forms arrived in Europe no later than the mid-16th century, and have been illustrated by Mr. Fu in 1542. At least 2 forms, the orange and orange ball cultivars, are still available in modern times. Drawing number 7 is a quadricolor cultivar. It is orange with a longitudinal stripe of black surrounding it like a belt. The gourd is quite flat, and is considered by Dr. Duchesne to be closely related to the orange gourds. Dr. Duchesne was the first to depict pumpkins and squashes in general realistically rather than idealistically. Flat cultivars of gourd have been known for some time, although without the variegation. Drawing number 14 is a gourd that's orange with a black belt. It's also a green form, and Dr. Duchesne did not consider it to be a distinct variety, although genetics have shown that to be not the case. The reality is, however, that the bicolor trait is unstable, with the green fruit cultivar producing occasionally bicolor fruits, and vice versa. Hence the reasoning behind the no difference between cultivars concept. Drawing 14A showcases a larger version of the previous cultivar, showcasing the variability within open pollinated lines. Some of the variants within the open pollinated pear lines resemble the marrow squash, indicating that the marrow group of squash may be derived partially from old open pollinated lines of the pear squash cultivars. Number 17 is another quadricolored gourd that's intense and light green with a yellow-orange tinge to it. It is egg-shaped and quite small. It's unusual having a separate yellow and orange region from the otherwise green fruit. It's listed as an Ovivera subspecies. Drawing number 36 is dated at 1770, the 27th of January. A squash similar or identical to orange warded, as Duchenne noticed. The color is intense and orange, and paintings 37 and 38 are very similar. Warded gourds are common in orange, and are the most frequently offered in modern cultivation, with separate colors being more rarely offered on sale in this modern era, while it used to be the reverse back in the day. This may be the earliest depiction of the pure orange warded squash we know of. Another warded gourd, more common, was dated between early December to late December 1769. It is a green-orange squash of the warded gourd variety. Number 45 is a marrow-type cultivar, not covered document that this paper is referencing, painted in 1770, January 30th. Drawing number 61 was dated in the 17th of January, 1771. The flesh depicted is quite intense orange, and the physiology of the flesh indicates that it was created for direct consumption. Dark orange is a rare combination in squash even to this day. This is one of the most unusual and most valuable forms depicted by Duchesne during its era. The dark coloration is rare in Cucurbita pepo, and by the way, sorry for getting that species name wrong the first couple times, my bad. But it's quite common in Cucurbita mochetta and Cucurba maxima. It is unknown how Duchesne acquired this cultivar for number 61. In actuality, it is unknown how he got any of his cultivars for painting. Just one of the mysteries of this world, I guess. It's speculated, however, that these cultivars are of European or Asian descent, not North American origin. Number 71 is the typical pie pumpkin, found in eastern North America, and it is probably a derivative of that original cultivar, rather than being the original pie pumpkin from North America. Number 76 is the green and gold striped squash that has a lot of ribs around it. It appears to be a German variant of the Italian marrow squash, or some sort of derivation from the Italian variety. Drawing number 77 was drawn in March 1770. Its shape is similar to that of a zucchini, albeit bicolor and warded. Duchesne considered this variety to be a of the cultivar Guaramon Noir. This cultivar does not exist to this day, so remains unknown if it is. Number 83 is of the straight neck group, although has a more constricted neck and more warts. Duchesne speculated that this variety may be an intermediary between the straight neck cultivars and the scallop cultivars. Drawing number 85 is an acorn squash, more or less identical to the forms we see today. Drawing number 92 was dated February 1770. It resembles a cultivar known today as striped crown of thorns, or one of the color forms available in the color mixture Chenette's crown of thorns. Dr. Duchesne mentioned that this cultivar is related to the scallop squash. 92A is a variant of the previous cultivar, but with darker stripes. 92AP is an uncolored version with only a small amount of coloration on the rind. Number 93 is said to be a light yellow acorn squash of good eating quality, not as deeply furrowed as number 85. Number 93N is a hybrid using the previous cultivar mentioned. It is far more viney than bushy, and it looks more like the Italian marrow cultivars than the previous cultivar, indicating that the marrow cultivar traits are more dominant, or that there was a mistake in the cross-pollination efforts. Most of the drawing picked mostly ornamental squash versus edible squash, and there's examples of non-culinary forms among the large fruited groups. Most of these cultivars, as a result, are not available in modern times. Zucchini squash, summer squash, and crookneck, the most economically viable summer squash cultivars did not originate until a century more after Duchesne's work. However, the primordial forms of the crooked-necked squash seem to make an appearance within Duchesne's work. The Duchesne collection also omits most of the North American cultivars, with most of the cultivars being wholly derived from European lineages. Crooked-necked squash may have emerged at least 2 centuries earlier in North America, but never made it to Europe until much later. This work indicates that there's a great level of variability that can be obtained through crossbreeding different lineages of pepo squash, and there's a great deal of variation that can be obtained through crossbreeding. A lot has changed in Europe since Duchesne's time. For most of the history of Europe, the pepo squash was used primarily for ornamental or, at best, animal food. Since then, there's been extensive breeding for domestic lineages that have edible qualities for consumption. And Dr. Duchenne's observations of these cultivars are consistent with the most recent considerations and models based on genetic analysis, indicating that these observations could determine the lineage of different pepo squash cultivars through observation alone, which is quite remarkable. We'll conclude this episode with a slideshow showcasing every picture that was not already on screen. And that's about everything. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you really enjoyed it and think you can donate, you can do so at Buy Me a Coffee, link in the description below. Thank you for watching.